strap in for the trio section. There's going to be one university president in particular who may not be happy with me, but on the other hand, he's probably not the kind of guy who would find a podcast about the arts and humanities worth listening to anyway, so I'm probably safe. Ooh, shot across the bow. You betcha. Hello and welcome to episode 59 of the BandWagon podcast for the week of April 28th, 2025. On this edition of the program, news and notes from the band world, including a tale of a band that is about to disappear and a tale of a band that never was. A tale of how this band thing can be more important to people than just the learning of slide positions. Music jokes. And it's yet another week where the trio section is just me. I'm your host, Rob Hammerton. Hello, dear listener. If you are indeed one of my dear regular listeners, you will by now have noticed that it's been a month since you heard any other voice on this podcast than mine. Yeah, I know. One of the attractions of this project was to have conversations with other people. I have not abandoned that, but in the last few weeks, well, sometimes scheduled interviews have needed rescheduling, and actually more often I've found some events to cover or things I need to get off my chest, and they were going to take trio section level time to do it. More than just 800 words in the second strain, you might say. So this week is another of those, but short of a complete technological meltdown or the most ridiculous coincidence of dumb luck ever, the interviews will resume next week. No, really, the dog will not eat my homework. I did promise you some really interesting conversations with some really interesting people, and I will make good on that promise. For this week, though, strap in for the trio section. There's going to be one university president in particular who may not be happy with me, but on the other hand, he's probably not the kind of guy who would find a podcast about the arts and humanities worth listening to anyway, so I'm probably safe. Ooh, shot across the bow. You betcha. So, get your music booster bake sale signs ready and away we go. Let's play the first dang strain. In this episode's first strain, news and notes from the band world. Dateline, Waukesha, Wisconsin. Credit on this story to the reporting of Matt Rohde of the online news outlet The Freeman. The Hill Symphonic Band held its final concert this past Friday, April 25th, but not because the band had any plans to go away. The band utilized facilities at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee at Waukesha, but that two-year community college is closing by the end of June because of low student enrollment, so the band is losing its home. The band's director, 69-year-old Craig Hurst, kept the band going through COVID-19, which was when the college's leadership last wanted to axe the group. At that time, he offered to take the program on for free and eventually did work out a deal to bring it back. Back in 2006, Hurst served on a panel convened by the University of Wisconsin colleges in response to their observation that a severe shift in demographics was imminent and would lead to sharp declines in student numbers. Indeed, enrollment at UWM at Waukesha has fallen 70% over the last decade. Hurst, a Boise, Idaho native, spent some time teaching in Texas before moving to Wisconsin in 1993 and starting work at the college, which was then called the University of Wisconsin at Waukesha. At that time, he took over direction of the Hill Symphonic Band. He retired from full-time teaching in 2017, staying on as a part-time teacher. At a rehearsal prior to Friday's concert, Hurst said, quote, "We are going to cease to exist, just like the campus will cease to exist. All of the equipment in this room belongs to the state of Wisconsin and the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee, and they're taking possession of it. And without any gear, it's hard to have a band." On that same evening, band member Harry Abramowitz said, quote, "I think it's going backwards, unethical, immoral, and wrong. Money, money, money is all they care about." Dateline, Indianola, Iowa. Credit on this story to the writing and reporting of Lupe Contreras and Kenzie Van Haften of the student newspaper of Simpson College, the Simpsonian, which bills itself as the nation's oldest continuously published student newspaper. The last time Simpson College had a marching band was something like 40 years ago. Last year, the college's former academic dean proposed the rebirth of Simpson's marching band program. Uniform designs were chosen and prototyped, students were recruited, but then the people who had advanced the idea of the program departed the school, and Simpson College couldn't provide the funds necessary to create and support the program, and the program was scrapped. Michael Eckerty, Simpson's division head for visual and performing arts, said that the music and athletic departments weren't given a say in many decisions or the overall oversight of the program, an issue that led to the death of the program before it began. Quote, I think the greatest barrier to starting a marching band is resources. Somebody needs to be actively recruiting to start the new ensemble, but there also needs to be a significant investment in equipment and all those sorts of things. Recently, the question of starting a pep band program first was brought up. Eckerty said allowing a pep band to grow into a marching band is a good idea, but it, too, takes a lot of financial investment. Quote, if a pep band were to grow and be more supportive, it could be used to build a marching program, but in the current climate, I'm not sure financially a marching band could be fielded without significant investment. One prospective member, Simpson College senior Danny Gilfinoff, said, quote, I was initially very excited to hear we'd be getting a marching band, though I wasn't sure how feasible it would be to have it all set up within a year. We had a lot of hype behind it in the beginning. There were new instruments being bought, as well as uniform designs being thrown around. We had a person dedicated to building the marching program, but I guess that starting a program from scratch is much different from entering one that already exists. And that's news and notes from the band world for this week. If you have a news item you think should be included in this segment, send me a link via email to heybandwagon@yahoo.com. Now we'll take a quick water break and meet you on the other side with another story about a band running into a financial wall through no fault of its own and how you can directly help. Hope you'll stay with me. Okay, let's pick it up at the second strain. In this week's second strain, this might be viewed as a continuation of the theme that's been developing so far in this episode, when bad financial things happen to good bands. Credit on this story to the reporting of Ashley Knight of WAVY in Norfolk, Virginia. A band that has been helping youth in Portsmouth, Virginia, now needs help from its community. The new generation marching warriors range in age from 6 to 17 and have 88 members. The band, originally called the Christian Antioch Marching Warriors, has helped numerous children go to college through grants. Band director Chris Hines said, quote, my father started the band as a church organization in 1992. We travel all over the country. We've been to Chicago, New York. We've won national competitions. Hines said that some of the organization's members have gone on to do great things. Quote, Darryl Tapp is a former member. He played in the NFL. We've got doctors, lawyers that come from this organization. And this year, they're giving $1,500 in scholarships to help kids go to college. But they're also now in need themselves. Shortly after they performed in Norfolk, Virginia's Illumination Parade last year, the band received word from the city of Portsmouth that they would need to move their instruments out of the facility where they had kept them for a few months. Then they were told that they could store them in a pod outside the facility, but that they would still need to come up with $1 million insurance policy to cover that. Historically, the New Generation Marching Warriors have maintained operations thanks to fundraisers, and often with money coming out of Hines' own pocket. Now, that's not cool. So now they've set up a GoFundMe fundraising project to help with costs, although Hines said that the dream would be to find a new facility altogether. Quote, that will allow us to operate in our own realm without having to share with the basketball team or baseball team. Ain't that always the way? So, in the spirit of if bands don't support each other, who the heck will, here's a little call to action, way before the CODA, which is where I usually place this sort of thing. Perhaps you might consider contributing to this GoFundMe. The official description of the fundraiser says, quote, as we continue to strive for greatness, we are currently seeking your support to help cover essential travel costs and uniform expenses. These funds will not only enable us to participate in upcoming competitions and events, but will also ensure that our young musicians have the proper attire that reflects the pride and professionalism of our organization. Your generous contributions will directly impact the lives of our band members, providing them with opportunities to grow, learn, and showcase their talents on larger stages. Every donation, no matter the size, brings us one step closer to achieving our goals and continuing our legacy of excellence. Check out this week's show notes for a link to that GoFundMe page, or you can get in touch with Chris Hines directly by phone, and that phone number is in the show notes as well. Ordinarily, I might not include that sort of detail, but it was included in the WAVY article online. After this short pause, the story that really was the driver for this whole episode. That story, and the other three that you've heard so far, have all appeared within the last few weeks. The band demigods work in mysterious ways, or something. Anyway, thanks for sticking with me. Okay, let's change keys and get into the trio section. This week in the trio section, a whole lot of something that I suspected at the beginning would be part of the BandWagon podcast, namely advocacy. We artsy types are accustomed to being the ones who run bake sales, sell magazines, sell candy. We do everything we know how to do and some stuff we don't, just to keep our activities going. Whether it's at a school or part of an independent organization, we're always having to fundraise. We're also nearly always having to do tons of extra work merely to justify what we do. It's both a tired old trope and a completely true and accurate statement. The football team, the Defense Department, they never need to do any of this fundraising. They never need to convince the American public that their very existence is worthwhile. And over at least the last quarter century or so, there's been an insidious stew of societal pushes at work that has actively threatened the study of areas of interest that frankly help people describe and express their humanity. Austerity politics have been a fact of life both in educational budgeting meetings and in the larger governmental arena as the gap between the rich and the poor widens, as oligarchs amass ridiculous fortunes while great swaths of our country descend into third world levels of poverty. Nearly constantly we're told there's just no money for that. And these austerity measures were born out of the early 1980s influx of anti-taxation activism, which was both encouraged and disguised as grassroots efforts by corporations and other wealthy groups and individuals. And at the beginning of this 21st century, the "No Child Left Behind" slogan was the thin end of the wedge that pried open the door to myriad educational plans dedicated to preparing our students for the 21st century workforce. That insidious little phrase was and is largely a front designed to prioritize business concerns over the development of well-rounded American citizens. You know, people who can critically think and who can express themselves eloquently via education that includes the arts and humanities alongside STEM courses and MBAs. As I've noted before in this very segment of the BandWagon podcast, there is nothing wrong with science, technology, engineering, or mathematics. At some very basic level, without those fields of study, this podcast does not exist. But a story that broke a couple weeks ago has caused me to once again question the motivations of the people who head up some of America's educational institutions. And no, I'm not even talking about the former head of World Wrestling who now presides over the demolition of the federal government's education agency. You know, as much as I would love to avoid putting the evening news and the political content of our lives into the BandWagon podcast, art is political. Any artistic product that is not at some level a political statement has a very good chance to not be great art. So, since band is music and music is art, here we are. And once again, as I did when I took note of the U.S. Department of Education's social media attempt to express gratitude to music educators and students involved in the band activity, you know how that went, I will let some social media comment section contributors do most of my advocacy and commentary for me this week. So buckle up, here we go. Dateline, Jacksonville, Florida. Credit to the reporting of WJXT in Jacksonville and WUSF Public Media in Tampa. Jacksonville University students are expressing frustration over the school's decision to cut fine arts programs and lay off nearly 40 faculty members in an effort to focus more on majors like nursing, engineering, and computer science. The day before the school made its official announcement, JU President Tim Cost said, quote, "As a premier private comprehensive university, we are in the business of preparing tomorrow's leaders for success in their chosen fields. It is our responsibility to continually evaluate how best to achieve that mission by focusing our resources at the intersection of student demand and real-world opportunity." I might consider suggesting that universities are in a different business than President Cost thinks they are, but let's move forward. That press release was entitled, "Jacksonville University reimagines university-wide academic offerings, intensifies investment in priority areas." The cuts represent an effort to reduce controllable expenses by about 10%, which amounts to about $10 million. They're part of a university initiative called Future Focused, which aims to create long-term financial sustainability. An email sent to students and staff said the decisions were the result of an intensive process over the past 6 months to understand demand for various programs and future opportunities in those fields. Students like Savannah Ivy, who is a music technology major, said the announcement of the cuts left her and her classmates feeling distraught, disappointed, a little confused, and angry. She said that when students first received a somewhat ambiguous email announcement on Monday night, April 14th, ahead of a set of informational meetings the next day, they thought it was spam. When students tried to attend those meetings, Ivy said they were turned away, and the locks were changed at Terry Concert Hall, as well as at the offices of music faculty. Quote, they turned away faculty, like the head of the music department and the music staff, from these meetings and wouldn't tell people what that was about. It's very upsetting that not everyone is getting the same information. There have been about 3 meetings today in different locations. We've all been separated, and everyone is being told something different. Ivy said she is already considering transferring to a different school. Quote, it's to the extent where I performed at President Kost's home for his holiday party in December, and now he's cutting my program? It feels like a slap in the face. It does. Ivy also said that the timing of the decision affects her ability to transfer to a school that offers the major she's interested in. Quote, it is now April. Usually transfer applications open in fall, and decisions are sent out by March at the latest. There's not a lot that we can do with transferring, and I don't think President Kost realizes that we have to re-audition for any of those BFA programs or music programs. Kost later said, quote, I know what things like music and theater mean to us. It's a very challenging environment, and there are many universities that offer it, but it's not the right fit for us to do. So we're going to make sure all of the students can get to graduation, but we won't continue the programs after they graduate. I don't think President Kost really does know what things like music and theater mean, but again, let's move forward. Kost also said that each impacted student would be offered a full tuition scholarship for the length of their time at JU. He added that 38 faculty members were notified that they will be fired and that the school has offered them full severance packages. Faculty had their own meeting with the administration, where they learned they would be laid off over time as their students graduate. One of those was music history and percussion professor Tony Steve, who said, quote, it's a sad day to be a Dolphin. I'm an alum. It's a very sad day to be in the academy to see this happen and to wonder how this could have been avoided. What do I do now? I keep playing. I sub with the symphony, and I have some other gigs and do some private teaching, and I'll possibly retool. The day after the meetings, Steve said that students had made their feelings known to him since word of the future-focused initiative slipped out. Quote, students have been texting me since yesterday, and I've been deflecting. I don't know what happens to them. I wish I had an idea what would happen. In the official university statement, JU's chief financial officer, Kim Banks, said, quote, this is a critical moment for the hundreds of universities like ours nationwide to focus and prioritize their academic offerings, serve their core constituents, and create long-term financial sustainability. The higher education industry nationwide is being asked to re-envision its financial model. We are ready to meet this new landscape. The undergraduate majors and minors in highest demand at JU will remain, including nursing, healthcare science, business administration, psychology, computer science, cybersecurity, marine science, aviation, finance, dance, and visual and media arts. But what JU calls consistently undersubscribed and specialized fields of study will be sunsetted after current students complete them. They will not be offered as majors to incoming students starting next fall. According to a JU statement, a number of medical, finance, and business majors are on the chopping block, but the majors to be eliminated also include the social sciences major, the philosophy major, all world languages majors and minors, the theater major and minor, the art history major with a concentration in visual arts, and all music majors, which have included jazz and commercial music, music education, music technology, music therapy, music performance, musical theater, and music composition. University President Kost said that the changes boiled down to whether the university wanted to keep offering students legacy programs of old or programs, quote, that get them ready for the 2030s. We had to look at how the students were looking at things like glassblowing, world arts, or languages. They're taking much less of those historically, and we had to look at that. Music, theater, and the humanities are what we are talking a good deal about today, and there's an increased emphasis on healthcare, business, and technology, which I think reflects a lot of what is going on in Jacksonville. He said that the changes were intended to address a nationwide drop in college admissions and to focus on programs with high job placement potential in Northeast Florida. Kost would not say specifically whether the changes are the result of debt that had to be addressed in the not-for-profit university. Quote, if you're asking me whether the music program made money, no. But this was not solely about if we could target any individual program. We looked at what the students' behavior had been over a long period of time, and when people are coming here and you're having 0, 1, 2, or 3 majors in a field, we had to take a look at it. WJXT asked Kost what the university would like to say to alumni who have funded and supported the arts programs. A spokesperson replied that Kost had spoken with, quote, several alumni and donors, and that the university valued their support and partnership and looked forward to continuing that relationship as it moves forward. Got all that? All the buzzwords are there. financial sustainability, getting students ready for the 2030s, and a couple of little poison pill tidbits as well, for good measure. One was the phrase real-world opportunity, as if the arts and humanities aren't really living in the real world, and JU's description of some of the majors it's eliminating as tradition-bound and old school. Legacy programs of old. Did you catch that one? Art, philosophy, and the social sciences are so old-fashioned. Get with the program, Grandpa. A short time later, over on the Facebook machine, a user named Mark O'Connor, yes, that Mark O'Connor, the renowned composer, violinist, fiddler, he posted about the Jacksonville University cuts and included one detail that none of the various news media outlets did, namely that the university was, quote, cutting fine arts and humanities as of yesterday across the board. In an interview, Tim Cost cited the 100 executive orders by the White House, as well as Governor Ron DeSantis' state requirements for changes at colleges and universities in Florida, all threatening to pull funding out of their school. So the first to go, with these anti-DEI practices, is the fine arts and humanities. If the attack on having any career in music couldn't be more pronounced than it is today, you not only have a university president cutting music here, but at the same time he is saying it is not important to the economy, to the future of the community, and what people want anyway. And Tim Cost was on the board of the Jacksonville Symphony, where I've performed as guest soloist. O'Connor continued, quote, here's another way to look at this. Being educated is important because young people must learn how to think, and it has worked for several generations. Tim Cost must believe there is little association between music, creativity, engineering, and science. There are a good amount of science students at universities like Harvard who are in the school orchestra. You can find this around the country. Music training is also just good for music, too. But music can make better students, more creative students. And a music program also makes a marching band. In a university PR photo, Tim Cost is standing on a ball field. So there's not going to be a band alongside the JU Dolphins now? The great American pastime. Remember this year's Super Bowl halftime with those hundreds of marching band students? The finest players are in a classroom for at least part of the day learning concert band repertoire. As a string player, O'Connor wrote, I always thought that band would be the last to go because of the perfect tie-in with America's #1 passion, sports. Are they just going to have a DJ now, spinning you some AI music? The replies to Mark O'Connor's post included many brief and explosively sarcastic comments, but also a number of lengthier, thoughtful remarks that, again, I will use to do my advocacy job for me. Kimberly Sue Beasley, the chair of the Jacksonville University Music Department, wrote this, in part, quote, Music department eliminated at JU this week. All of us faculty are fired, including full-time tenured full professors. I keep telling the students they didn't do anything wrong, because we didn't. We had 123 majors and 21 minors. We have been accredited for 94 years by NASM. JU mismanaged finances, and the music has paid the price for their mistake. But they can't take away the lives we have touched, the careers we have shaped, and the job satisfaction and skilled individuals we have in the professional world. It is sad that the legacy programs are not something JU wants to invest in. So short-sighted. It didn't even matter how many majors we had. From a commenter with the screen name Jessica Amir, quote, This is heinous. This is what happens when a bunch of dudes with MBAs try to run the world. As long as these dudes are licking daddy capitalism's boots, this is the garbage we're going to see. I sincerely hope no one plays for any event that includes him again. If you're going to so callously toss out the arts from a university in your trust, you shouldn't be able to enjoy music and art anymore. From a commenter with the screen name Ken Clark, but not the justly famous music educator from New Hampshire, for any listeners who might wonder, came this thought, quote, I don't know the particular circumstances that led to this cut at Jacksonville, but I can confirm it is happening throughout the U.S. in colleges and universities. One reason is that colleges are left without federal funding, which we had before such cuts, which in turn has led to higher tuition, fewer scholarships, and lifelong indebtedness of student loan obligations to pay for student fees. In Kansas, the legislature has allowed colleges to cut full-time tenured faculty or remove tenure as a policy, as Emporia State University did last year. Legislators agreed that budget-related problems may be resolved this way. Many colleges have gone to part-time teaching exclusively, but as to the humanities and the arts, they may enrich one's life or that of others, but they don't prepare students for most practical or hands-on skilled professions, and so they are among the first to go because they're seen as a luxury, not necessary curriculum, and enrollment often reflects this. Rob here. I might take issue with Mr. Clark's thought about whether the arts and humanities prepare people for some of those skilled professions, but yet again, let's move forward. with one last comment from someone with the screen name John Hamilton, which actually does rebut that part. Quote, "This is not just a budget decision, it's a deliberate dismantling of what makes education transformative. The sudden elimination of fine arts and humanities at Jacksonville University and the cruel way it was handled should alarm anyone who believes education is about more than job training. It's about developing whole, thoughtful human beings. As a high school mathematics teacher for the past 15 years, I've seen firsthand how the arts shape successful learners. My strongest math students often come from music, drama, and visual arts programs. They think creatively, persevere through challenges, and bring unique perspectives to problem solving. The arts don't detract from academic rigor, they enhance it. To see entire departments erased and 40 faculty members dismissed without warning is not only unjust, it's educational malpractice. And to hear JU's president suggest that music students can simply become nurses or engineers completely misses the point. Creativity, discipline, collaboration, and expression, these are not optional. They are the foundation of a well-rounded education, and they benefit every profession. This decision reflects a disturbing national trend. Political pressure, whether from governors like DeSantis or vague claims about federal executive orders, it's being used to justify cultural censorship, defunding of the humanities, and the elimination of programs that challenge conformity. It's anti-education. Let's be clear, this wasn't about fiscal responsibility. It was a targeted attack on the arts, on diversity, on critical thinking, and on public expression. To the students and faculty affected, your work matters, your programs matter, and this country desperately needs your voice, your passion, and your creativity. We must push back against this narrowing of education, because if we let them cut the arts today, they will cut the soul of our schools tomorrow. And who's to say that the arts aren't the soul of our schools? Sorry, this is Editorial Rob horning in and wrapping up. Economically, intellectually, and just in terms of how people treat other people, we seem to be on the cusp of a very dark and dangerous period in our history. That's not, I don't think, hyperbole or just a florid description. No, there are people with their hands on the levers of government and power who are intent on returning this country to the Dark Ages, partly as a way of further enriching themselves monetarily, partly because they're not terribly imaginative or creative people themselves, apart from coming up with amazing new ways to torch institutions and be performatively cruel to people who ain't them, and partly because, well, how else to put this? Art is a threat. Totalitarian rulers throughout the world and throughout human history have known that artists are the most potent challenge to their rule. Visual artists, dancers, musicians, thespians, writers, dear Lord, writers, they all have the capacity to push back, to undercut the authoritarian's message, to cast even the narrowest rays of hope where otherwise there might be darkness all around. That last phrase would be contained in exactly 0 dissertations about science, technology, engineering, or mathematics. Again, that doesn't make STEM the bad guy, but it's the artists who will keep it all from going under completely. And we band folks, in addition to being odd ducks and bouncy silly people and every other weird thing we can be, we are artists too. So, we get to participate in the resistance. We have to. BandWagon will return in a moment. Here comes the dogfight. This week's dogfight is a little bit of a relief, considering the first strain, second strain, and trio, which got a little frowny, a little woe is me. Not that the issues raised aren't important, they are. But you, dear listener, did not come here for exclusively hand-wringing content. There are plenty of places you can go to get that. And who better to pick us up, dust us off, square our shoulders, and push us back into the fray with a smile on our face than the great Randall Standridge. He writes interesting band pieces for, well, not just for young bands. And having observed him as the keynote clinician for the New England Band Directors Institute last July, I'm prepared to suggest that he's not just a placer of notes on paper. Here's a little item that he posted on social media not too long ago, directed specifically at young band students, but I think anybody can get a little something out of this. Here it is. Dear music students, it's that time of year again, time when you have to decide on the classes you're going to take next year. I hope you will take it from someone who knows. Stay in music. In 8th grade, I almost quit band. I'd gotten frustrated because I was being challenged past my natural talent, and things were suddenly hard. I did not quit, and I can't imagine how different my life would be if I had. Now, it would be very easy for you to say, "Oh, sure, Randy Standy, you became a professional composer, so of course your life would be different, but that doesn't affect me." And you'd be wrong. It wasn't just my teaching and composition career I got from band. It was self-discipline that has made me a successful adult. It was work ethic, which has been a key to my career. It was being willing to stick to things, even when they get hard, something that has added longevity and strength to my marriage, 26 years and counting. It was a sense of self-worth and self-pride, something I desperately needed in my middle and high school years as I figured out who this Randy Standy person was supposed to be. It was friends that always had my back. It was mentors that always believed in me. Music class is so much more than learning to perform notes and rhythms. It is learning to be successful at whatever task is set before you and learning to work with and trust those around you. I hope you'll stick with it. I really do. It will change your life if you let it. Yeah, that was what I needed. So, after one last pause, we'll wrap things up for the week. Thanks for continuing to listen. To wrap up this week, let's take the CODA. For the CODA this week, in the continuing spirit of lightening the mood a bit, music jokes can often come off as mean, particularly if you're telling jokes about somebody else's instrument. So, here are some music jokes that I will tell at my own expense. What's the difference between a saxophone and a chainsaw? You can tune a chainsaw. What's the definition of perfect pitch? When the saxophone lands in the middle of the dumpster. If a bass player is drowning, what do you throw him? His amp. A father set up bass lessons for his son. After the first week, the father asked him what he had learned at his lesson. The son said, "On my first lesson, we learned about the E string." The second week came, and after the lesson, the father asked what his son had learned that week. The son said, "On my second lesson, I learned about the A string." The third week came by, and the father said to his son, "You know these lessons are expensive. What did you learn this week?" The son said, "Oh, I quit the lessons. I already got a gig." How many conductors does it take to screw in a light bulb? Who knows? Nobody ever looks at them. What's the ideal weight of a conductor? 3.5 pounds, including the urn. And here's my all-time favorite one. What do you call a conductor buried up to his neck in sand? Not enough sand. Thank you. I'm here all week. That's BandWagon for this week. Thanks as always for downloading and listening, even to the jokes. You notice I didn't tell soprano, accordion, oboe, viola, drummer, trumpet, or trombone jokes. I know what side my bread is buttered on. That list right there is my whole family. BandWagon was written, researched, and produced by your humble host. Musical interludes were produced by Hammerton Media, from source material largely by John Philip Sousa. I have to get along with these people. You can listen to more episodes at the Pause website, heyband.podbean.com. Please give me feedback. Let me know what you like or what you think might change. You can do that using the email address heybandwagon@yahoo.com, or leave a 90-second voice message by going to speakpipe.com/heybandwagon. Be aware that I do reserve the right to include your message on the podcast unless you say otherwise. Those contact links and links to this week's news items and conversation topics can be found in our show notes, as can a link to BandWagon's merch store thanks to the good folks at TeePublic. Please share the show on social media, and thank you for that. If you enjoy this podcast, please do share it in the direction of somebody whom you think might not be a listener yet. Word of mouth really is the best recruiting tool. And to keep up with the pod every week, subscribe to BandWagon on the Podbean app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever fine podcasts are sold. For now, take care, stay in touch, stay in tune, and we'll do this all again next week. I'm Rob Hammerton. Do you want fries with that?